Alright, time to plug it in and whoa, that's cool. As the course of my life as a new dad marches on, I've had to prioritize the time with my family over time tinkering with custom keyboards. Sometimes, that means I won't touch a new board for months. Crazy as it sounds, this board has been waiting over a whole year for me to build it. Well, the wait is finally over. Let's get building. This is the FancyAlice66 keyboard from FancyTech, a company now known as Final Key after a couple of rebrands. It's a stacked acrylic keyboard that requires a bit of work even before assembly, which may or may not be appealing to you. Since I was new to this kind of building process, I had to make sure I was assembling everything in the proper order with the appropriate layers in the correct orientation. It reminded me of those 3D puzzles that stack together to form a shape or a character. For those newer to the hobby, you can probably tell by now that this isn't what your usual keyboard layout looks like. This takes inspiration from the TGR Alice keyboard, which has a whole legacy of its own. However, the true Alice layout does not have arrow keys, and this one does. Therefore, the FancyAlice66 actually uses the layout dubbed by the community as Arisu. The addition of the arrow keys usually helps those who prefer the dedicated keys over using key combos or layers to access the arrows. I ran into issues with the cherry clip-in stabilizers being too big for the plate, so I went ahead and used Duroc plate mount stabilizers instead. The plate itself has so many flex cuts, so I decided to try it without foams for maximum flex. For the switches, I decided to go with KTT Roses, a great linear switch at a low price point. I hand lubed these with Krytox 205 grade 0. I didn't need to film them since the housing tolerances were so tight. I had bought this keyboard long ago because I had wanted to try both a stacked acrylic keyboard and the Arisu layout. The level of construction looked daunting, but the build was fairly straightforward once I understood which screws went where. I've found that the fun of trying new things is worth overcoming the fear of failure, and this board showed that it's no different. For a board so dazzling, I wanted to go with a bright and colorful keycap set, so I decided on NicePBT Noel from Cannonkeys. It helped to have full kitting for a good price, especially with the included shorter spacebars for the Arisu layout. I also don't have GMK Noel, which honestly would have been nicer. Let's see how it all sounds together. Okay, so it sounded a bit thin across the board, but what stood out to me was how uneven it was. There were certain keys that sounded sharper than others, and switching out keycaps and switches barely made a difference. I suspect it has something to do with the design of the flex cuts on the plate, but unfortunately, I was not able to figure it out. I rebuilt it with the plate foam, and here's how it sounded. Alright, so that helped clean up some of the harshness and evened out the sound across the board. It did lower the pitch and mute it overall, but I would say that the plate foam is almost necessary if you want a clean sound. It also brings the volume down to a level that wouldn't be as offensive at the office either, despite it being a very showy board. It still retained some flex despite putting in the plate foam and made for a comfortable typing feel. Not too stiff, not too flexy. Aesthetically, this keyboard looked gorgeous on the desk. The combination of the iridescent layer and the RGB shining through all sides made it a sight to behold. This was definitely made for those that appreciate having a multitude of colors splash across the desk. Understated, this board was not. My only gripe would be the screws showing on the top of the case. It's distracting and warps the iridescent layer. It still brought so much vibrancy to the space. If anyone else were to come across this board seeing the uncommon layout and bright spectrum of colors, it would become a conversation starter for sure. My initial impressions on the Arisu layout is that it's comfortable, most likely because I can touch type. My wrists don't feel as angled or crowded together, and the keys feel at the correct distances. My right thumb does tend to hit the left side of the spacebar due to my hand position during usual typing, so that will take some getting used to. Overall, definitely something nice to try that is slightly more ergonomic than your usual keyboard. One of the things that I felt was overlooked was the feet. Without any kind of rubber feet to place underneath the acrylic layers, it would essentially be putting a hard case on a hard surface, especially with the screw heads sticking out at the bottom. So, should you get one? Even though it's been over a year, the FancyAlice66 is still available to purchase online. This would be a great option for those that love a vibrant, bright colored keyboard with RGB in the Arisu layout with a price that doesn't break the bank. The typing feel and Arisu layout made it comfortable for me during usage, but it didn't win in the sound department for me, which is one aspect that I am picky about when it comes to keyboards. I'm glad you could join me on another keyboard journey. This is your friendly neighborhood key apothecary. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again on the next video. Take it easy.